Go. All righty. And I will turn it over to our fabulous alums.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for attending the personal finance session today. Thank you, Ashley. I was about to say, can you hit play on the slides? I am Rochelle Upshur, and I graduated from UVA back in 2010. I'll let you go, Diamond.
Oh, yeah. I am Diamond Walton, and I graduated from UVA just a year prior, College of Arts and Sciences in 2009.
Yep. So really quickly, if you want to go to the next slide for us, Ashley, we'll just kind of introduce where we are now. So like we mentioned, I graduated in 2010. My undergrad was in anthropology. I went on to get my degree, my master's degree in higher education / student affairs. But I am currently actively working on my MBA at Virginia Commonwealth University. So not too far down the road from UVA in Charlottesville.
Yeah, so after I graduated from UVA, I went on to get my MPH at Emory University and Rollins School of Public Health and studied behavioral science and health education there. And then after that, I joined the Peace Corps, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Peru for a couple of years, worked as a community health worker, and came back to the States and had been working in the public health sector for about a decade, and recently made a transition into philanthropy. So I do some grant making, but also just started a company that is focused on financial education called Alpida Social Capital. So that, this is my passion. And when I'm not working, I'm spending time with my 2-year-old and my 4-year-old who keep me and my husband very, very busy. So that's me. So a quick overview about what we'll discuss today. Personal finance is a huge topic, and we are just going to scratch the surface. We are going to give you a very high level, kind of stratospheric high level overview of this topic, but we hope that it's helpful. And, I think Rochelle and I are open to you all reaching out to us afterward. So you'll see from the overview, we'll spend a bulk of the time going over just the elements of personal finance that we think are pretty fundamental. We'll have some time for questions and answers, and then we'll have a raffle. So I don't think you guys realize that there would be prizes today, but there will be. So stick around to the end of the presentation and we'll have some goodies for you. All right, on to you, Rochelle.
So first thing we wanted to talk on was budgeting, which I think in a lot of your responses when you signed up for this presentation, there was a lot of questions around budgeting. And like Diamond mentioned, we are just going to scratch the surface on this, but there are a couple buckets that we wanted to touch on in relation to budgeting. So the first one is really around mindset. So for a lot of folks, they see budgeting as being very restrictive, and I have to kind of, monitor what money is coming in and what money is going out in terms of expenses. And I'm kind of locked into this, right? And so it becomes very rigid. But a budget doesn't have to be that, right? A budget is really not to have a perspective of being limited or restrictive, but really being able to give an overview picture of where is my money coming and going? How am I achieving my goals? How am I achieving my savings goals? And just really making sure you understand where your money's going and how it can be purposeful, right? So one thing about that is just trying to change and shift your perspective around the mindset of budgeting and not being so restrictive, but really opening it up to how you can achieve your goals for currently or even for the future. And then so next is types of budgets. So there are a wide range of different budgets. They all go by various different names. I'm going to hit on a few of them and kind of give like a short description of what they are. What I would say is there is no perfect budget. The best budget for you is what you make it to be, right? So you can start with one type of budget and use it for a couple of months and might say, this isn't really working for me, and then switch to something different. So don't feel like you have to be locked into a budget for, forever and ever once you choose it, right? So the first one is, and maybe you guys are using this method and maybe you guys aren't, but there's the no budget, which is essentially means you don't have a budget, right? So you see money come into your account, it's deposited, you buy a couple of pieces of clothing, you eat out a couple of times, might buy a ticket to a concert, I don't know, right? And then you look at the end of the month and you're like, well, my money is gone, right? And that's okay. If you do a no budget right now, that is fine. But we do want to kind of shift you to a couple different budgets that might help you manage that a little bit better. The second one is that I want to share is called spending first, which means that you spend not all your money, but you hit all of your expenses for the month, right? So you have rent, you have car insurance, you have food, groceries, maybe buying a birthday gift for somebody. And then whatever that remaining balance is at the end of the month, you either move that money into savings or you put it toward one of your goals, right? So that's the spending first methodology for budgeting. Another one is called saving first. And so you might have heard this terminology before. It's called paying yourself first. So whenever that check hits your account for the month is, before you do anything expense-wise, you're going to take a certain amount of money to put into your savings or toward your goals, right? So you might take $100 to put it toward a down payment for a car or a down payment for a house, or even for some of you guys, maybe saving up for, proposal at one point in time to partners, right? So you pay yourself first, and then once you take care of that, then you start going through your expenses for the month and balancing that out. Another budget type is called 50-30-20. And so 50-30-20 stands for 50% of your monthly income goes towards your needs, 30% of it goes towards your wants, and 20% of it is for savings. Now, how you break down those buckets inside your needs, wants, or savings is up to you, but that's just another type of budget that's out there. So 50-30-20. And then the last one I want to share with you is a zero-based budget. Some of you guys might have heard this. This has been coined by Dave Ramsey, which is essentially that every single dollar in your budget is accounted somewhere. So let's say you have $1,000 coming in on your income line, then you're going to have $1,000 worth of expenses every month. And so it balances out to be $0. So that make sure that you're not overspending somewhere than what you're actually bringing in for the month, right? So you're not having to put something on a credit card or having to borrow money somewhere else. So those are kind of the overview of types of budgets. And then I know in one of the questions, people said, well, okay, I created my budget, but what do the categories look like? And like, how much money should I be putting in each of those categories every month? So these are not perfect categories. They're just like overview. You can always add different categories based to your certain situation, but I just want to kind of give a couple of them that are out there. So one of them is housing, which includes like your rent or your mortgage payment, utilities, HOA, and then any services that you have. So like lawn service, if you have a dog and you want someone to come in through the yard and, pick up the mess that your dog makes. So any services that are related to your housing would be in a category or bucket. And I would say to be comfortable, you probably want to spend between 25 to 33% of your monthly income in that category. I wouldn't say going above 33% because then it starts really eating into possibly your wants or your saving needs. The next bucket to look at is transportation. So if you have a car, that would include gas. That would include if you take the train or bus, like going back and forth into work, or if you regularly Uber or Lyft, right? Or anything, et cetera, related to transportation, how you get back and forth to work or just around your everyday lifestyle. And I would put around 10 to 15% a month for that particular category. The next category, which I'm pretty sure we all love, especially in Charlottesville with all the food, is your food bucket. So how much money are you spending on groceries every month? And how much money are you spending on eating at restaurants or eating out, going out with friends, things like that. And I would say you probably want to put that percentage between 10 to 15% every month. And then another category is lifestyle. So that lifestyle category can include clothing, entertainment, birthdays, holidays, et cetera, et cetera. And every month, probably between 5 to 10% in that area. And then lastly is your insurance, right? So looking at health insurance, car insurance, renters, home, et cetera. Now, one thing I would say is in the insurance category around health is, and we'll get to it a little bit later on, you only want to budget that out if it's not taken out of your check, right? So if you have additional insurance outside of what's coming out of your regular check, then you want to also include that in your budget. And I would say about that should be 10 to 20% each month. And then lastly, there's two other categories that may or may not be part of your budget. One is debt, and then one is giving, right? So if you have any debt around student loan, credit card, personal loans, et cetera, then you want to probably allocate 10 to 20% of your monthly budget to paying that amount down, right? One thing I want to say is mortgage, if you have a mortgage or are planning to get a mortgage in the future, you do not want to include that part of your debt payment, right? That's going to actually be under the category of housing. And then lastly, if you do decide to give, and we have another slide on that later on, you want to give between 5 to 10% around that, okay? And then lastly, a couple other things to talk about with your budget is sources of income. So you have your 9 to 5 job, right? So you're going to get your monthly or biweekly paycheck. Any of your part-time jobs or side hustles, as I like to say, that have steady income every month, you want to have that part of your budget. If you get regular money from parents or family members, right? So I remember when I first started out after college, my parents gave me a little piece of money every month just to help out, which I love. So if you have that consistently, you want to have that in your income. But then also sometimes you'll have irregular or unexpected income, which I would say add that in ad hoc. Because if you're not expecting it at the beginning of the month, but it comes in later in the month, you can always add that to your income line and then adjust your rest of your categories accordingly. And then lastly, there's 2 other things to go over is just when you create a budget, you want to have some goals in mind, right? So those goals could include debt management. You want to take a trip, so you want to travel somewhere. You might be saving for a car, maybe saving for a house. You might even be saving to move to a different state or to a different city, right? So including those goals in your budget is very helpful. So it's not kind of like, I'm not making any progress toward my goals. You want to be focused on it on a monthly basis within that. And then lastly, you're going to make some adjustments along the way. You're going to create a budget and it may or may not work that first month. And so you're like, ooh, let me, maybe I'm eating out too much, or maybe I want to put more money toward my debt management. So you can make some adjustments. Like I said earlier, once you create your budget, whether the type of budget or just the information in your budget, it can be adjusted. Keep in mind, it is not a static thing, it is fluid and it will change along the years, right? So you might get a new job, you might start a family, you might want to invest in a business. So just know that those adjustments will come along the way. And then one last bit along that too is reach out to some folks who you want to be your accountability partners. So accountability partners are helpful along the way because they remind you about your goals and what you set out. And also they can be their encouragers as well. Because I know sometimes it's really easy to say, it's been a hard week, so I can treat myself, right? And it might not be in the budget, but those accounting partners are really helpful along the way to just guide you, reset. We all stumble, but they'll kind of get you back on track with that. So that's just a really big overview around budgeting, but I'm going to turn it over to Diamond next to talk about cash flow.
Thanks, Rochelle. So cash flow, I'm really going to kind of dig into, Rochelle touched on this when she was going over the budget, but once you have a sense of your financial goals and needs and have a budget that matches, it's time to kind of look at your cash flow. So as you may know, your cash flow is how your money is moving in and out of your bank account. And it's important to monitor your cash flow because it gives you a sense of whether or not you're going to be able to meet your financial goals and maintain your budget. So how does a cash flow work? So the first thing you look at is what money is coming in. And this is typically can be regular income. So that, as Rochelle mentioned, that could be your 9-to-5 job. And you know that that's going to come in on a certain schedule, a certain day every month. There's your irregular, your side hustles like driving for Uber, renting out a room for extra income on Airbnb, starting a business to sell your art through Etsy, or starting a podcast and kind of monetizing that through Patreon. So that's income that's still coming in, but it's probably more on an inconsistent basis and maybe an inconsistent amount. And then if you start to have some investments or you're lending money, you'll have some income through interest or dividends on those investments. I don't know how many of you are in that category, but that definitely counts as some of your income. And then of course, gifts, as Rochelle mentioned. And then some of the common outflows are, fixed expenses. So like many of the bills that are monthly, when they're due. And so they're a lot more easy to budget for and kind of fit into a regular schedule. But then there are some non-fixed expenses. So like those items like food and clothes and entertainment, and though they are happening pretty regularly, they're going to happen each month, they can fluctuate. And so that's why it's important to kind of move back to the budget, kind of figure out how much can you actually afford per month so you can keep those categories under control. And then another important thing to keep an eye on is interest. So a lot of times the interest that you pay on the loans are rolled within your monthly bill. So if you're paying interest on your student loan debt or your mortgage, that's rolled into your monthly bill. So it feels more like a fixed expense. But there are some cases, like in the case of credit card debt, that the interest could fluctuate. And so that's really important for you to keep an eye on that. And that can have a big impact on the outflow of your funds. So it's really important to kind of get a handle on your inflow and your outflow to make sure that you have a realistic budget. What I often recommend for folks is first to kind of list out their financial goals, create a budget, and then monitor their cash flow. And it's a really simple thing to do. All you need to do is log into your bank account and kind of look at the transactions, what's going in and out of your account, and then compare your actual transactions with your budget and just see how well they line up. And oftentimes they don't necessarily line up. And again, like Rochelle mentioned, that's okay. It's really just an exercise to raise awareness of what is actually going on with your money, and then you can make adjustments from there. And I think once you have a sense of, okay, this is how I'm actually spending my money, but this is not going to allow me to reach my financial goals, then you're able to kind of adjust both accordingly. So I'm going to pass it over to Rochelle to talk about debt management.
Awesome. So part of budget and personal finance is debt sometimes, right? So if you don't have debt right now, awesome. But probably some point down the road, you'll accumulate some type of debt, right? But we want to just manage that debt and reduce it as quickly as possible. So wanted to go over a couple of categories to look at that debt, right? So the first thing is organizing your debts, right? So understanding what you have. You have credit card debt, car loans, personal loans, student loans, things like that, because you want to understand not only your loan amount, but also what your monthly payments are looking like. Interest rates, like Diamond mentioned, can be rolled into your monthly payments, and then your expected payoff date, right? So once you kind of know that, then you can really make a better plan in terms of how to tackle your debt moving forward. The next step in that is contacting your creditors, right? And so oftentimes we can do a lot of online banking, so we can log into those accounts and grab all that information directly. But sometimes it's helpful just to call our creditors, right? So to get a better understanding from their perspective of when the loan was taken out, what's it supposed to be paid, and then the expected payoff date. And the other thing too is sometimes it's helpful to contact your creditors just to give them an update on what's going on in life, right? So you guys are on the verge of graduating, so you can say, hey, I'm graduating in May, but I haven't landed a job yet, right? So I don't actually have a source of income right now, or calling them back to say, I have a job now and I can, maybe adjust my monthly payment plans to pay more, right? So talk to them. I know it can be scary to talk to creditors because everyone's very fearful. They're just like, no, it is what it is. It's a set payment amount. But oftentimes when you talk to them and kind of explain the situations, there are some alternatives behind the scenes that maybe not often advertised across the board all the time. And the next step is, once you've kind of organized your debts, understand, talking to your creditors, what's going on, is prioritizing your payments, right? So what are those critical payments that you need to make in full every month, right? So if you don't make them in full, then there's going to be a penalty on them, right? There might be additional interest charge, a late fee charge, things like that. So you want to prioritize those payments toward the front. But then also maybe looking at, once you identify the payments that need to be paid in full, then what are the payments that you can just make minimum payments on, right? So if you have a credit card, for example, and the minimum payment is $25 right now, but you have your student loan payment, that's $200, then, we're going to prioritize our student loan payment of paying that in full and $200, and then just doing the minimum on our credit card until we can put more toward it at a certain point in time, right? Another thing too is maybe prioritizing your debts in terms of what can you pay off the quickest, right? So, say you have a $500 credit card and you got a gift, you got some unexpected income this month, and you can put $250 down on that credit card, right? So prioritizing that of what you want to pay off quicker. And then another tip is automating your payments. So one thing that's nice is now in this very digital world, we can have our payments automatically withdrawn from our checking accounts. And so sometimes I think in the world of student loans, there is a perk with that, right? So if you pay your loan, your monthly payment automatically, I think there's like a 0.25% or 0.35% discount on that, on your overall loan in terms of the interest amount that's accruing. So that's a benefit and a perk by automating some of your payments. The other thing with automating your payments, just to be careful about, is the due date in which those payments are coming out. So sometimes when you first set them up, they may all hit within the first half of the month, right? So one's on the 2nd, one's on the 10th, and one's on the 14th. And so that might not necessarily work with how your budget's set up. So you can always go back to your creditors and ask them to adjust it, right? So say you want 2 of your debt payments to come out the first half of the month, and you want the second 2 to come out the second half of the month. And that just helps you balance your finances a little bit better. And then lastly, if you are, if a goal of yours is to get out of debt in terms of paying down your credit card, student loans, things like that, avoid new debts. I know it is very easy to go out here and open a store credit card to get that 20% discount, or to buy a brand new car and have that monthly payment. But just keep in mind, if that is a goal of yours, try to avoid new debts as much as possible. We know life happens. We know sometimes you're gonna have to put something on that credit card in that moment, but just be mindful about that as you move forward in terms of managing your budget and managing your goals in terms of your finances. And so with that, another piece is investing. So I will turn that over to Diamond.
And I'll quickly just piggyback on Rochelle. So another good thing about when you're automating your debt payments, you're more likely to pay on time, and that also will boost your credit score. And so, when creditors are looking at, if you're looking to buy a house in the future or make a large purchase, when folks are looking at your credit history and see that you pay consistently on your debt, that will likely boost your FICO score, your credit score, so that you're eligible for future debt or future financing. Hopefully good debt that's helpful for, again, this all centers around your financial goals. So in terms of investing, this is going to be very, very high level, and I'm going to focus on 2 things that are on this slide actually. But before I get started, I just want to say that, I want to offer a disclaimer that I'm not a registered investment advisor. RIAs are registered with the federal government, and there are strict laws around offering investment advice. I am not an RIA, but what I'm offering is some investment education. So this is for educational purposes. If you want to dig into this, I really recommend you contacting a certified financial planner or an investment advisor. So to start, I'll start out with a couple of definitions. The first there are 2 types of investors. There are accredited investors and non-accredited investors. And an accredited investor is a person that has an annual income that exceeds $200,000, or if they filed their taxes jointly or have a spouse, it's $300,000. A person could also be considered an accredited investor if they have a net worth of $1 million or more. And I know many of you are probably thinking, that is not me. I'm not an accredited investor, so I will not be able to make any investments. But that's okay. So if you do not, meet those qualifications, you are considered a non-accredited investor like myself, and there still are options for investing. The distinction really is that accredited investors are able to engage in certain investment activities that are a bit more risky because they have more wealth to absorb the risk of those investments. And so non-accredited investors just have different options available to them. So 2 really common ways to just start investing, or you will likely begin investing as soon as you graduate and have your first job. The first is through certificates of deposit, which is a really easy way to start investing. Certificates of deposits are savings accounts that have you deposit a fixed amount of money in them over a fixed period of time. So say for like 6 months to a year to 5 years, and you receive a fixed interest rate on that. So when once the term is up, you receive the principal, so the original amount that you've deposited along with the interest. And the great thing is that it's one of the safest ways to save money. And if you deposit your money with a bank or a financial institution that's federally insured by the FDIC, then you can deposit up to $250,000. And even if the bank crashes, you will still be able to get that money back. And so it's an easy way to kind of dip your toe in the water around investing, of putting some money into place and seeing the return on that investment. And another really cool thing about certificates of deposits is that they're available at community development financial institutions. And these are places where the money that you deposit in these CDs are used towards wealth, kind of like community building activities. So like building affordable housing, health centers, kind of investing in small businesses. So there's ways to invest in your community while you're investing for yourself and making a return. There is kind of a relationship between the risk and reward in investing. So things that are lower risk often have lower returns, and things that are higher risk often have higher returns. Since this is a lower risk investment, it has a lower return, but still something to consider when you're exploring, learning about investing. The next thing is your retirement savings. And so a lot of times when folks think about savings for retirement, it's like, you're contributing money into this account and you're accumulating it, and hopefully you have enough when you retire. But the reality is that these are investment accounts. And so one of the more common retirement savings and investing account is a 401k. And this is something that many employers offer to their employees, where you set up the account when you're hired, and there is money automatically withdrawn from your payroll and deposited into this account. And then what employers do to incentivize you to deposit this money is they sometimes match those funds. And so they'll give you a contribution up to a certain amount or certain percentage. And a lot of times people call this free money. And so you'll get money contributed from your employer, you're contributing money. And these accounts are typically structured in two ways. There's a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k. And the Roth is taxed after or make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah. So the Roth plan is taxed. The withdrawals can be are tax free. So that means that the money is taxed when you put the money into the account. So it's taxed and then you put the money in, so that when you withdraw it, it's tax free. But the traditional one is that you deposit the money and it's taxed once you withdraw it. There are other similarly structured accounts like a 403b that folks who, maybe if you work at UVA, you may have the option to have a 403b or work in a nonprofit organization, or an IRA, which is an individual retirement account, which are accounts that folks who have like small businesses, or if you want to have an additional retirement account, you can have multiple. You can open up one of those, and there are still limitations about how much you can contribute per month or per year. And there's also penalties for withdrawing the money early, because the point is that you keep the money in for a long period of time so that you have enough to retire on. And if you have questions about that, typically the company that is hosting these plans will have advisors for you to talk to and kind of help you walk through those details. Some of the other points on here, like traditional investing around stocks and mutual funds, bonds, ETFs, that's a bit more complicated. There are a lot of platforms that you as a non-accredited investor can kind of engage with. So like E-Trade, Ameritrade, Robinhood, I think that's Robinhood has been in the news. And these are kind of entry points into engaging with these aspects of investing. And the great thing about those platforms is that they often have investor education components as well. So I'd encourage you to check those out and kind of read up on it before you kind of put too much money into those areas. And always remember that there is risk with investing. And then the last two on the slide are regulation crowdfunding, which is kind of a newer way of investing. It's a way to invest at kind of like venture capital, but you're contributing a small amount of money, and you're pooling those funds to acquire equity in a startup or in a piece of real estate, or you're lending out money as a form of debt, and you're going to get paid back the principal with interest. And so there's some platforms like WeFunder and Buy Back the Block and Republic, where you can practice this type of investing. Again, risky, but still an opportunity for folks who have a little bit of money that they want to see if they can invest and make a small return. And then the last thing is appreciating assets. So we talk a little bit about this. I mean, all of these are basically appreciating assets, hopefully, if they're invested well, but these are more kind of the tangible assets. So things like your home or land or art, things like that. And again, to the point around credit and debt management, oftentimes, if you want to finance these types of assets, you just have to make sure that you're prepared to do so. The housing market right now is insane. So I don't know if I would highly recommend trying to purchase a home right now. But if you're considering that for your future, it could just be helpful to just one, start with your budget, get your finances in order, work on saving up for a down payment, and then also making sure your credit score and all of that is in shape so that when the housing market is a bit more reasonable, you're prepared to take the leap and actually put in an offer on a home. So again, all forms of investing are kind of a pretty, they have their varying levels of risk. So keep that in mind. And also when you make a return on your investment, there are tax implications. So even if something is lucrative, you still will need to pay taxes on the gains that you make on certain investments. So it's important to consult a tax professional. So I will bring it on over to Rochelle.
All right, so the next piece we're going to talk about is insurance, right? So we want to make sure that you're covered in that aspect as well. So we just talked about a lot of different aspects in terms of investing, talking about your bank account, but there's some additional measures that you can take as individuals to make sure that you are insured if something happens, right? So say you have a loss of a job, or your spouse is no longer able to work, things like that, right? So the first thing is that we want to go over is insurance through your employer. And before I do that, I just want to give a caveat. So a couple years ago, you can keep cooking actually if you want to. A couple years ago, actually when President Obama was in office, he changed the rules around health insurance for young adults, right? So if you are still underneath the age of 26 and your parents are still willing to cover you on their insurance plans, you have that benefit and that perk, right? So that might be a little bit of cost savings your first years out of college, so that you're not paying your premium for health insurance through your employer. So talk with your parents to see if they're willing to do that for you up until the age of 26. But then know at that point in time, you'll have to transition to your employer's insurance, or going on the open market to secure insurance on your own. But if you secure a job through your employer, typically what they're going to offer to you insurance-wise is health, vision, and dental, right? So depending on your health needs, you might only get health insurance, which is going to cover your regular yearly physical checkups with your doctor, right? As you can see, I wear glasses, so I have to get vision insurance every year as well, because I need to be able to see. And then also there's dental. And so just depending on the packages that your employer provides, all three of those might be packaged together. You might only get health insurance, you might get health and dental, health and vision. You'll kind of work through that with your employer, and they'll go over the different premiums. And so just to kind of give an explanation around what are premiums. So your employer and the insurance company will lay out every month what you as an employee will contribute for your premiums, and then what your employer will contribute. So for example, there might be a plan, let's say it has health, vision, and dental all included. And so that premium, as you as an employee will say, it's $50 every paycheck. So you're gonna pay $100 a month for that. But your employer is covering, let's say, $100 of that premium every single month, right? So you're paying 50% of the cost, but then your employer is paying, I said 100, but $100 every paycheck. So they're paying $200 a month. So they're covering a little bit more than 50% of the cost, right? So just know that those are kind of breakdown. The other thing to keep in mind about it, when you first start your first job, you'll hopefully have an opportunity to meet with your benefit specialist, and they'll go over everything with you. But you typically have 30 to 60 days to make a selection, right? So they'll go over all the options with you. You choose the best plan that fits for you, but you have to either, send an email, fill out an online form, or even do it, pen and paper to submit that. Please do not miss that window, right? So when you are a new employee, that's when your opportunity is to opt into those insurances. And if you miss that window, you have to wait until the open enrollment period. Open enrollment period is typically 2 weeks. Sometimes companies have it for a month, but it's only one time a year, right? So if you're not insured, or you don't get insured during that initial window of onboarding, you have to wait until that next cycle. That could be 3 months later, it could be 6 months later, it could be a whole year later. So don't miss that window, and hopefully your benefit specialist will explain that to you. Another thing through your insurance for your employer is life insurance. So your employer will typically insure you about 3 times whatever your annual salary is, right? So let's say you're coming out and you're making $40,000 a year, your employer will insure you up to $120,000 a year, right? That might, in the event that you pass away, right? That might cover all your expenses, and it might not. So just be mindful about that. The employer is not trying to profit off of, an unexpected loss or anything like that. So you might need to do some additional insurance, and we'll talk about that later on. Another insurance that the employer will provide you is short-term or long-term disability insurance. So sometimes things happen, we get hurt on the job, or we have some medical things that come up, and we've got to be out for a short amount of time, right? And so that's when your short-term disability will kick in. And so typically that'll cover about 75, 80% of your paycheck. Some companies are great and it'll cover 100% on your short-term disability, but that's really for short stint of time, right? So let's say you had a major surgery, you have to be at home recovering for 4 to 6 weeks. That way you have supplemental income while you're out and recovering, and then you can come back into your job and then receive full paycheck once you're off short-term disability. But sometimes there's things in life where we have to be on long-term disability. So we're looking, typically long-term disability is 6 months or longer. And so that means that your job is protected and you're at home recuperating, handling whatever you need to do until you can be cleared by your doctor to come back. And typically long-term disability insurance is most times 100% of your paycheck, but like I said, it depends from company to company. But those are all things that your employer, so typically life insurance and short-term and long-term disability insurance is covered by your employer, but know that you can always get additional coverage as well. So if you want to click the next couple of points, Ashley. Yep, you got it. So there are a couple additional insurances that your employer will not provide that you individually can go out and shop around, right? To Geico, Northwestern, Mutual, like you can do a couple different options. So one thing that I will encourage everybody is to get renters or homeowners insurance, right? So if you didn't have renters insurance while you were in college, please do it when you're an adult, right? So renters insurance for the year is most times between $100 and $150, right? It's not super expensive. Breaking that down to a monthly payment, it's between $10 and $15 a month, right? You can spend $10 or $15 a month on renters insurance. The reason why I say that is it covers all of your belongings, right? So if there's water damage, if there's a fire, if for whatever reason your house gets broken into, all of your belongings are covered, and you might pay a small deductible, right? $100 deductible, $250 deductible, but all your belongings can be replaced, right? The insurance company will write you a check and you can go replace everything, right? So it is just a little bit of peace of mind to pay that $10 or $15 a month to know that all your belongings are covered no matter what. Same thing with home insurance. It's the same kind of bit. If you decide to purchase a house, you want to have home insurance, you can cover everything. And that's also covers like someone comes over, y'all had a barbecue in the backyard and for whatever reason, the porch fell down, then that person and their medical bills are covered and they're not going to come and sue you individually for that money, right? So make sure you get renters or homeowner insurance, whatever is applicable. And you have a car, make sure you're getting car insurance, right? And so same thing, you can shop around, you can keep all these insurances together or you can keep them separate wherever you get the best deal. If you have a loved one, a little one, a four-legged little loved one, get pet insurance for them, right? To help cover vet bills. If they get allergies for whatever reason, they have sickness as well. They are not human, but they have human issues as well that they need to be taken care of. So make sure you have pet insurance too, if you decide to have a four-legged friend. And then the other two, life insurance and short-term disability, that's I wanted to cover again. Just because your employer provides it to you does not mean that you cannot go out and get additional insurance, right? So say, for example, you have 2 cars, you have a boat, and you have a house. That's probably not the situation, but let's just say that as an example, right? Your life insurance is not going to cover all those expenses to pay them off or to be able to sell them, right? So you can get additional life insurance. Most times your employer will provide that information to you. So like, let's say it was with Northwestern, right? You can, the employers can provide you a certain amount, but then you can say, well, I want to pay an extra $20 a month to get another additional $300,000 worth of coverage, right? You can do that. And so it's going to be a case-by-case basis of whatever works best for you, but know that that is the option to have that additional insurance out there as well. Same thing with short-term and long-term disability insurance. You can get additional insurance than what your employer provides you as well. And the last piece about personal insurance is travel insurance. Not sure if you guys have ever heard of that, but travel insurance is not something that you would pay on a monthly basis, but typically travel insurance happens when you book a trip. So if you book an airline ticket, you book a cruise, you go through a travel agent, whatever it might be, they'll say, hey, do you want to include travel insurance? It's going to be $26 a day or $70 for the whole entire trip, whatever it might be. I would highly encourage you guys to take advantage of it. And I know it's like, well, I had a certain amount of money to spend on this trip, but it is beneficial. And I will tell an example. My sister a couple years ago traveled to Brazil for the Olympics, and she had been saving for it for a long time, but she had purchased the travel insurance. Thankfully, she did. Something happened on the day of her travel to Brazil. The airline actually canceled all flights and said, figure it out, right? Get to Brazil on your own. And I think her ticket was maybe like $1,000, $1,200 round trip was for her ticket. She wasn't expecting having to pay for another ticket through a different airline to get to Brazil, but she had purchased travel insurance. And so not only did they cover the cost of her initial ticket, they helped her book her second ticket. And they also gave her like, I don't know, like a per diem as well to like help her stay in a hotel, get food, all those things, right? So that would have been, let's say, an additional $1,200 my sister had to pay to rebook her flights. But because she had travel insurance, which I think she paid $70, she didn't have to worry about that. So that's just another piece of insurance to consider as well. And then lastly, if you want to hit the last two bullet points, Ashley, thank you, is your beneficiaries. So with all of these insurance plans, there are beneficiaries attached to it, right? And so what a beneficiary is a person you're going to name in your insurance policy that's going to receive the payout in the event of your death, right? We hope that you don't pass away, but we want to just make sure we've got our ducks in the line, right? So you can name one person. I think sometimes you can name 2 or 4, it just depends on the layout. And you can split it up. So for example, my beneficiaries are my sisters. I have 2 sisters. And so they get 50-50 payout if I pass away. So when you set up all these insurance plans, please make sure you set up your beneficiaries as well. If not, it becomes a legal battle and it becomes messy very quickly. So set up your beneficiaries. The other thing to keep in mind about your beneficiaries, revisit it at least once a year, right? Life happens, there's life changes, right? So you might get married. You might have somebody else more important in your life that you want to switch and be the beneficiary of your payout, right? So make sure you update that on a regular basis so that the money gets to the right place that you want, right? And then there's one other thing I would encourage you guys to look up. We won't go into detail here, but also look up FSA and HSA. So FSA is a flexible spending account, and an HSA is a health spending account. And so FSA is typically, and they're both tax benefits. That's why I say look them up. But you can contribute a certain amount of money to each of those accounts every year. And then let's say you put $1,000 in your flexible spending account. You get to use that $1,000 at the very beginning of your benefit period. And then you can just use it throughout the year. That can be used to like pay for glasses, pay for pharmacy prescriptions, pay for co-pays, things like that. And then HSA can be used for like larger, let's say surgeries or necessary health spending, but it also can be used for childcare. So I'm not going to go into details about that, but look up those 2 things as well, because those are part of your insurance/benefit package when you're an employer. So with that, as we talk about insurance, there's also employer perks as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Diamond to kind of go over that.
Yeah, thanks, Rochelle. Yeah, so maybe some of you have already secured your next place of employment. Maybe some of you are looking at companies to work for, but there are other things over and above the kind of traditional benefits packages that employers offer. And I've categorized them as employee perks because they are unique opportunities that kind of trying to hook in some good candidates into these organizations. Some additional things on top of insurance that employers offer are like paid leave for various things, whether you get sick or taking care of someone or you have a child. So oftentimes employers offer education reimbursement. So if you are trying to take courses that will help you perform even better at your role, then many times employers will pay for those courses. There may be some strings attached saying, if you leave you quit your job after you take your classes because you found a better job, you may have to pay back that money. So you may have to stay at least a year. There may but a lot of times employers will invest in your professional development just so that you're a more well-equipped employee. Other benefits are around like wellness. Sometimes employees have gyms on campus. Others will give you some discounts on our local gyms that you can visit and just to take care of your physical health. And then others will actually pay you to volunteer. And so some employers will give you like 8 hours or 40 hours, up to 40 hours a week, a year to volunteer, and those hours are paid. On this slide, I've highlighted some kind of unique opportunities that employers are offering for their employees. So at Apple, the text is kind of small there, but it's basically a matched giving program where if you donate to a certain nonprofit, then the company will match your donations and contribute based on volunteer hours. At Patagonia, they've been offering on-site childcare since the 1980s, and that for those of you who know people who have kids or have kids, childcare is a huge expense. And so if an employer is offering to subsidize that, that will significantly help your budget. Another common employee perk is employee assistance programs. This is fairly common. It's basically an opportunity for employees to meet with a specialist. So it could be a counselor, it could be a lawyer, or someone who has a specialized background, just for a few sessions to talk through a significant life change or experience. And that will save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And so those are really helpful, especially as you're going through different things at work. And you know, these employers are really trying to look out for their employees so that they can perform well, but also so that they're thriving in their personal lives. And then the one other thing that I wanted to point out is that some companies are actually offering to help folks pay off their student loans, and that this is a very new perk, because I think a lot of employers are realizing that the folks that are coming into their companies are kind of burdened with student loan debt. And so this is just a title of an article about a few companies that are offering this. There some are, I have listed here, like Aetna, Estee Lauder, Fidelity Investments, but that's just something to look at and to consider, because when you're putting together your budget and you're looking at the different categories that are kind of eating up the bulk of your income, if an employer is offering some perks that will actually kind of eliminate that line item, because they'll kind of cover that for you, that really will give you a lot more flexibility in your budget. So when you're looking at jobs, it's helpful to look at the salary that they're giving you, but also the benefits and potential perks, and see how all of that actually functions together to see what you're actually getting from that employment opportunity. So I'll shift it over to Rachelle for the next part.
So the last piece that we want to share with you in terms of personal finance is giving back, right? So I put this quote here, which is, giving is the most fun you'll ever have with money. So, I mean, we were talking about how to be financially savvy with our own money, how to get budgeting, investing, taking advantage of employee perks. But it's one thing to take care of your own personal finances, but it's another thing to be able to give freely to others. So wanted to just list a couple of ways in which you can give back. Some of these are financially and some of these are free, right? These are just giving your time and your resources. So one thing is, you can always give back to your alma mater, UVA, which me and Diamond are doing right now, right? So these are our services that we're just willing and happy to talk to current grads, right? And giving back, like I said, doesn't always have to be in a financial sense, right? But I will say UVA will come asking to give back to them in some shape or form, right? There's Giving Who's Day, and there's other ways in which they'll reach out to you to say, give back to your class and all that stuff. So you can always give that back. And it is a, typically when you do give back through either through schools and universities or through organizations, there is a tax benefit in part of that as well. So there's some things you can write off at the end of the year, but giving to your alma mater, giving to your church, right? So if you give on a regular basis in terms of tithe or offering, that's one way, or even volunteering with your church. Local community organizations, whether they're nonprofits, or just an organization that you're passionate about, or you have a connection to, giving to them, you know, maybe giving toward a particular project that they're working on to help them achieve a goal. Volunteering, like I said, volunteering can be in lots of forms. So volunteering time, energy, just being there to hand out things, you know, soup kitchens, things like that, wherever your passion lies. I always enjoy this one, is really random acts of kindness, right? So if you want to go into a store, grab like, it's a hot day, grab a water bottle and a snack, giving it to somebody that you see outside of the store, or just, you know, having some extra cash on hand and going up to somebody and giving it to them. Or I know sometimes folks in drive-through lines at Starbucks, right? They'll pay for the car behind them, and then it kind of just keeps going down the line. So I always enjoy giving back in terms of random acts of kindness. And then I said too, like your time, your talent, and donating items, right? So those are all free items that you can do. So, and I know there's amazing people who are at UVA that have tons of talent, whether you're creative, whether you have a passion about something, whereas me and Diamond have a passion around finances. If you have a passion around, tutoring, anything like that, giving your talents helps as well. And then donating items, a lot of times we hold on to things that we might not need. So don't forget that you can donate items to Goodwill or Salvation Army. But you can also, if you want to get a little bit of coin back, right? There's those, there's Facebook Marketplace that sells some things. There's like Let Go, all those different apps that are out there as well that you can kind of sell things, get in and out of your house, but kind of getting a little extra coin as well. But so that's kind of where we want to end that in terms of giving back. Don't forget to give back as well. And it doesn't mean it has to be on a monthly basis, right? Like it could be one time a year, quarterly, whatever really is on your heart to do it in that regard. So that kind of concludes our overall picture of personal finance. And so Ashley submitted some of your questions to us, but we wanted to open the floor up for questions and answers for folks. So feel free to either drop your question in the chat, or if you want to unmute and turn your video on, you can ask it that way as well. Okay, so we had a question come through. Would you recommend to have both a 401k and a Roth IRA? Diamond, do you want me to take that, or do you want to answer that one?
You can start and I'll round it out. Okay,
perfect. You can actually have both. So a 401k or a 403b, like Diamond mentioned, can be for nonprofits. It's 401k and a 403b are the tax codes, to be honest with you. It's not a different account, it's the same setup. But you can have that with your employer, right? So if your employer offers, definitely take advantage of that, contribute to that. And then you can have another account, another Roth IRA through another avenue, right? So we had mentioned like Ameritrade or Charles Schwab, and you can fund that account as well. Just keep in mind, typically a 401k or 403b is going to be traditional IRA, which means you'll get tax on the money coming out, whereas a Roth IRA, the money's taxed first. So on the flip end of it, when you retire and are pulling money out, it's tax-free on that withdrawal at that point in time.
Yeah, so yeah, the questions are always tricky because it depends on the person's situation. So, I mean, I'm assuming you're asking the question because there are certain limits to both of these accounts. And so with the 401k, you likely have that with your employer. The benefits of that are that you're likely able to get a match. And so it's free money, so you're incentivized to contribute, but there's a limit to the amount of money you can contribute per year. And so then if you want to be able to contribute more, then you may want to open up an IRA, and you can have an IRA that's Roth or traditional. So, and, as Rochelle mentioned, you're taxed either before or after, but that just depends on your savings goals and maybe how close you are to retirement. If you are kind of closer to retirement, you need to like really be able to build up some more money more quickly, and you need more options, then it could make sense to have a couple. But again, always consult a financial professional for sure. Okay, next question.
So the next question we have is, if you give to a retirement plan at a job and they match your money, will you lose the money if you change employers? Which is a really good question. So it depends, right? So it depends on the employer. So the thing that you want to know about that is the vested period. So some employers, and you start contributing to your retirement plan, you are 100% automatically vested the day you start working there. So that means you could switch jobs 6 months later, and everything that employer matched with you, you'll take all that money with you in addition to your contributions. Some employers have longer investment periods. So some of them have a 1 or 2 year investment period. Some of them have 5 years. So you have to be at that company or in that state system for that amount of time before you're able to take the employer's contributions. Sometimes what works out, like, for example, I'll say I worked in Virginia at one point in time in my career, and there's a state retirement system that I was paying into. I left the state of Virginia for a period of time, but I left my investments here because I hadn't met the investment period, right? It was 5 years. I left. I am from Virginia, so I wanted to come back at some point in time. I came back, And I was able to pick up the clock where I left off at. So I had 2.5 years, I think, in the system. I worked another 2.5 years, and now I'm vested. So now all those employer contributions I can now take with me. So sometimes it's a matter of choice, depending on if you plan to return to that employer, return to that state system, you might make different choices. But you want to ask about that vestment. When do I become vested in those funds?
I agree with all of that. Yeah, just always read the fine print. Always, I worked at UVA and I worked between the health system and the academic side, and so there were some changes there. So and honestly, the folks that are managing your account are the most well equipped to kind of tell you the intricacies, and they do it for free, and because you have an account with them, you're a client, and you can just reach out to them. So yeah, I think Rochelle did a great job. The next question is, how much of this advice changes for someone entering a PhD program or other continuing education program? So I think a lot of it is applicable. So if you have student loans, then those will then be on hold. You won't be paying those while you're still enrolled in school. And then also your budget will likely look different because you will not be trying to purchase, well, I don't know, everyone has different goals. So some folks do purchase homes when they go into their PhD programs and things like that. But I think a lot of it is it's still applicable, just making sure that you have a clear idea of how your money is going in and out, have a good sense of your budget, have a clear sense of your financial goals. And I think it's really going to prepare you well for when you're exiting your program. My husband has a PhD, and so as he was going through his program, they prepare you for a tenure track position, but there wasn't a lot of talk about other job opportunities, and then also just kind of the pace of pay as you move through different kind of career paths. And so if you have certain career goals, you just kind of want to keep those in mind as you're moving through your educational program, to just see what are the appropriate careers, what are the kind of starting salaries, and will that get me on the trajectory of meeting my financial goals. But having a budget, I will recommend that for anybody, regardless of what stage of life you're in. In terms of like the retirement savings and things like that, you can reach out to the folks that are over your program. I don't know if they will necessarily offer those options for you unless you are an employee, like you're a graduate research assistant or something like that, but you could still open an IRA. Do you want to take the next question, Rochelle?
Yeah, so the next question we have is, how does being taxed work? How does your tax kind of for your income work if you start remote, but your job is located in another state? So that is a tricky question, and I am not a tax person. I am not an accountant, but what I will say is you definitely want to talk with your employee benefits or your human resources office. So they should be able to tell you that, because it's going to all depend on where your W-2 comes from, right? So at the end of the year, you'll get something from human resources that says, W-2 for 2021, you made X amount of dollars, but it'll tell you where that employer is located at, right? So the employer is located, let's say in Indiana, but you've been working remotely in Virginia. And so a tax professional will be able to explain that to you a little bit better, because different states, even if you make income in different states, will tax it differently. So I can't give 100% answer to that, because that's not my background. Diamond, I don't know if you have more to give on that one.
I'll just quickly say, I did work for an employer that was located in Maryland, but my residence was in Virginia. And so that happens a lot with folks that live and work in the DMV area. And that was okay. And I think because it was often that this employer was hiring folks from either Maryland or Virginia, even though they were located in DC. They were located in Maryland and they were hiring folks from DC and Virginia. They had those forms ready. So if your employer is used to hiring remote workers, they should have the appropriate hiring paperwork for you to complete, the appropriate tax hiring paperwork for you to complete, so that you are, taxed at the appropriate rate, and your returns and stuff are the way that they organized the way they should be. But your employer should have that information if they are used to hiring remote workers. We're at time, it looks like. So thank you all so much for listening to us. Oh, and our raffle, real quick.
Yes, so we have a raffle, so let me stop sharing and then I'll share mine. All right, awesome. So we're doing a raffle for 2 books. One is Get Good with Money with Tiffany Aliche, and the other one, Diamond, is
It's Real Impact by Morgan Simon. So if you're interested in investing in socially responsible investing, this is a really good book.
Yep. So we are gonna click to spin the wheel to see who our 2 winners are. So the first name is gonna be for Get Good with Money. And let's see whose name is selected. We've got Emma Carter. So congratulations, Emma Carter. We'll get your contact information from Ashley so we can make sure we get that to you later on. And then the second winner is going to be Sarah Winger. So congratulations to Emma and Sarah. Both me and Diamond will get your information from Ashley so we can send those amazing books to you to help you on your financial journey after your time at UVA. So with that, I will stop sharing again. And we can drop our contact information in the chat as well. If anybody wants to follow up and reach out to us, ask us any additional questions and help you on your journey. But this was an amazing time to spend with everybody. You are taking the great step, right, to preparing before you actually enter in the real world to get some resources that would be helpful for you in the future.